Alright everyone, so I'm going to be doing the dungeon guide here once I get commenced, so not talking to chat for the next 20 minutes or so. Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at a walkthrough of the Sirensong Sea, the level 61 dungeon, the first dungeon you'll unlock as part of Stormblood's main scenario quests. I'm not going to be going over any spoiler related stuff, but if you don't want to be spoiled on this boss's, well, I mean, I'm not sure why you're watching this video in the first place. We're going to be doing it walkthrough style, as I am in the middle of a 24/7 event where I'm going to be doing shifts with my moderator and my girlfriend, and we're going to be keeping the stream live for a full week, pretty much straight. Almost a full week. I don't think we'll actually make it all 7 days, because the last day or so, I think I have to cover too many extra hours on my own. But that's the general goal of it. So we're just going to do a basic dungeon walkthrough as I play through the dungeon right here. I'm going to get deliberately hit by some mechanics just so you guys can see them. But first dungeon's pretty easy, so I don't think we have to worry about too much. So the first couple of dungeon pulls are just these banshees. You'll walk up to the first bunch, and then 2 more will join. You have some help from some NPCs for some AoE, so try to keep them in the NPC AoE just to make things a little bit easier. No reason not to. After this pull, we'll have to kill a few more banshees. As you'll see, they'll jump up on the stage from the 4 I was gonna say corners, but you know, both from each flank of the ship. What do you call is that starboard? Is that I don't know ship lingo. Just kill the 4 banshees. They'll jump on the ship. I don't need to get fancy with it. So a lot of people watching this video might still be having issues with one of the quests in the main story. I'm not going to go into specific details about it, but it was an instance quest that a lot of people have been struggling with. I'm sure some people are going to ask me in the comment section, how did you get past this quest? So in order to get past the quest that some of you may know I'm referring to, I literally just tried over and over again until eventually I got through. And that's all I did. So just keep trying, be a little bit vigilant, and you'll eventually get through. So after taking care of the second set of banshees, you'll hit the rock, you'll dash forward a little bit, it doesn't do anything, and then you just have to deboard the ship, and you'll come to the next couple of trash pulls before the boss. So you have an Ancient Emir, you have 2 Cracklaws. You can do these 2 pulls separately. I didn't know we were going to be doing the big pull right here, but I guess that's just to make the video a little bit more fun. Wouldn't it be great if we just died in this video? Wouldn't that just be stellar? We did it normal the first time I ran this dungeon, so I didn't expect us to do it differently this time, but I'm perfectly okay with that. The Ancient Emir doesn't do anything special. The Reflection of Karlabos also doesn't do anything special. Nice little shout out to the boss from Sastasha Hard Mode, who was also a boss in Final Fantasy V. I believe he was the boss just before you actually got to the ship graveyard in Final Fantasy V. He is actually taking a lot of damage. Does he have like Vuln stacks? I think Karlabos is just hitting him pretty hard. I'm going to refocus onto Karlabos here. Tail Screw. I mean, it's AoEs. Don't get hit by them. I mean, that should be pretty standard at this point now that you're after level 61 or whatnot. And after this, we should be on to the first boss, who is incredibly simple. Expected it to be simple, mostly because people are still getting used to all their new skills, or any of their skills or changes that they might have had. So, very, very simple boss. We'll describe it as we go along. So the first boss of the dungeon is Lugat. Pretty basic stuff for the most part. He only has a handful of mechanics that are pretty easy to deal with, especially if you're someone who's been playing the game. This attack right here, if it hits you, it does a pretty decent amount of damage, and it knocks you back. But it's not lethal. Just don't get hit by it. Hovering close to the boss makes it much easier to dodge. Try not to be at your absolute maximum range. This, again, simple. Just does some split damage AoE, stack up. Make sure that whoever's taking it doesn't take it alone, and you won't have any issues. Alright, so Sea Swallows All. I'm going to wait till it does it. So the first Sea Swallow All sucked us in and then does 5 AoEs like this. You just don't want to get hit by those AoEs, and then follows up with this half a room cleave like the boss did before. Now, I don't know if that Sea Swallows All, the first one, is always the same effect. If we don't see the second effect of Sea Swallows All, which the first time I did this dungeon happened the second time, I'll go out of my way to describe it. I think based on our DPS, though, we should probably see that mechanic a second time here in a second. I just screwed that up. Okay, no. So Sea Swallows All is the one that pulls towards, and Overtow actually knocks you away. Overtow is just a knock away, which will then be followed up by the split damage AoE. So there you go. had to remember the names. This is only the second time I've done this dungeon. Sea Swallows All will pull you towards them and do AoEs. Overtow will knock you away and then do the split damage AoE. So you should all just rush back to the middle of the room and split the damage. And that's it for the first boss. Nothing too fancy. Drops 2 pieces of loot. I noticed the first time I did this, it was always 1 accessory and always 1 left side piece, like boots or pants. I'm going to have to see throughout the rest of this dungeon if that's consistent, but that was consistent for the entirety of my first dungeon run. Also, a lot of the chests drop 1 or 2 pieces. This one, as you can see, also dropped healing boots and offending bracelet. I think that was, yeah. So the next bunch of trash is not too much more threatening than the first, but there are some AoEs that you'll want to keep your eye on. You saw those blue fire AoEs on the ground. Just don't stand in them. I mean, that's pretty simple at this point in the game, I'm hoping. And I shouldn't need to do all too much on the descriptive end of describing that mechanic to you. This dungeon, in its entirety, definitely feels like they were trying to take it easy on players so they could get adjusted to their new skills. Having done the level 63 dungeon at the Media Tour, obviously scaling for it may have changed, but there were some pretty high damage aspects of that, and I felt like quite a few more mechanics than this first dungeon right here. We'll have to see if much has changed since I got to play it at the Media Tour, however. Again, these AoEs, don't get hit by them. And then don't stand in the fire afterwards. I'll stand it so you can see how much damage it does. 4,000 per tick. They don't even stay on the ground very long. But no reason to stand in them. I know some people will be like, no, if it doesn't do enough damage as a black mage, just heal me. Just heal me. Just move. Alright, second trash pull is done. Treasure coffers are hard to miss in here, thankfully. Also, don't forget, while you're leveling, eat that food. Make sure you get that food buff. Choker of Slaying. Oh, I already have one of those, huh? Well, let's include this in the video. I've been a big fan of... I botched it? Come on now. Alright, I'll just try again. This pull, a lot of AoEs, a few extra adds. You have 1 giant skeleton, and you have a bunch of tiny skeletons. So, kill all the skeletons, and don't get hit by the same AoEs that you've been dealing with for the last 2 enemies. The AoEs pop a lot more frequently on this one, and also the skipper itself, the main skeleton, will drop more AoEs on you. But don't panic. It's something you can't handle. It's nothing you haven't dealt with before. Just trying to hope that with these Armor the Destroyers that I get a few extra procs, see a few extra crits in there maybe, and get those meditation stacks. And I believe after this we're on to the boss, unless I forgot a trash pull. Oh, we all tried to go the wrong way, even though we have a mini-map that is telling us where the correct way to go is. Alright, the second boss was actually pretty fun. Its mechanics may not be abundantly clear, unlike the first boss. But TLDR, when you get a tether on you, just run away from the boss. Your goal is to not stand in the bad and to run away from the boss when he tethers you. Pretty simple stuff. I'll describe the mechanics as we see them, though. So Shadow Flow is where he's going to drop a bunch of AoEs on the ground, like this. And if you stand in them, you get a magic vulnerability. As you can see, I was standing just a little too close and got 2 stacks there. But you can hit him from max melee range without actually being hit by the mechanic. And then Bloodburst just does AoE damage. Obviously, if you have more stacks of magic vulnerability, that's going to be doing more to you. So Enter Knight, this is the one where he tethers you. All you have to do is just make a hasty escape. Considering Sprint is now free of TP cost, not a bad time to use it. Also, I know that the debuff is kind of being covered up by my UI. I haven't moved it around much yet. It only has like a 35-second duration, approximately. So for this one, it's the same Shadow Flow that we just did, where you have to not stand in all the bad stuff, except that there's also some ads that spawn around the arena that cut off some of your potential locations to stand by. I inched forward there, and I actually ended up getting another stack. That's perfectly fine. And I think at this point we've seen all the mechanics. He's going to do Enter Night again. Okay, I did use, just in case you're wondering, I did use Diversion. Before anyone goes, Happy, how'd you pull aggro? Why you know Diversion? So if you don't run away from that tether, he will just give you a constant barrage of vulnerability stacks. I believe a total of 5 stacks, 4 or 5 stacks, if you don't break the tether. We know that, we learned that our Paladin was indeed able to cover the effect, since we ran with the same Paladin for the dungeon before, but the Paladin themselves, of course, will be getting the vulnerability stacks. Our Paladin was able to survive the AoE that comes out there, even with 8 stacks. So as long as a tank has them, it's not too bad, but of course, there's ultimately no real reason to have it, unless you're trying to, like, I don't know, keep your Black Mage from needing to move, or to keep one of your melees in melee range itself. There's not a huge benefit to that right there. Also, showing off something I haven't done yet this dungeon, got to use Goad on my monk. It's fun bringing that to the table. This pull, there's nothing special to say about it. Just kill the rotting captives and kill the Warden Town. There's nothing special to really say about it. I did notice that he got a little low there. I didn't see if that was from burst damage or just from our healer doing a bit of DPS. Looking at his MP, I'm going to assume he was just doing a bit of DPS there. Alright, we also have Tactician going off right now from the Bard, talking about using some of our new resources here. Digging it. This pull, again, just a lot of enemies. Nothing really special about them. The Undead Warden himself, as you can see, has that AoE that he does. I think he also has a tank buster, but I'm going to have to watch him a few more seconds to see if he actually does one. I'm just thinking of this enemy from Palace of the Dead, and remembering that the one in Palace of the Dead had a pretty serious tank buster, but it didn't look like he used one right there. Alright, I'll just kill these guys off, and then we'll be fine. I think there's one more pull after this, which resembles the boss from the 40th and 140th floor from Palace of the Dead. Very similar, but it is stunnable, especially as a monk, not having to worry about diminishing returns. I have a bit of power on this next piece of trash coming up. Okay, no, we have this first. We have to kill these Warden Towns. So this is just 2 Warden Towns. Nothing, again, nothing all too fancy. Oh, hey, I won the loot. I'm going to be desynthesizing all of that loot, because I already have loot to replace it, you know, for my actual leveling, you know, higher item level stuff. Oh, I probably should have mentioned earlier in the dungeon, maybe a question that pops up early on. I normally mention it at the beginning and ends of my guides when they're more structured, but the item level of the gear from here, in case you didn't see me hover over it, is indeed item level 260. So if you're somebody who's been working your way up, main story quests and side quests have been rewarding high quality I-255 gear, and you can replace that with the 260 gear here, and as you can see, there is quite a lot of it. Like I said, even a weapon in this case. Carpenter, I really need that. Alright, so here's the trash pull I was talking about. So I'll point the mechanics out as they happen. It's probably easier that way. Honestly, even if you screw up the mechanics on this trash, it's not all too detrimental. We didn't do it right at all the first time, and it was perfectly fine. So Dark, AoE, don't get hit by it. I believe the attack we're looking for is Seduction. It gives you the Seduction status effect. I'm just trying to remember if it was actually Seductive Scream. So we stun that. If you get hit by Seductive Scream, it will pull you in uncontrollably towards that flood. And that flood doesn't hit that hard. I think it did like maybe 11,000. It's, you know, not bad, but it's also not all too threatening at the same time. Stun it. I'm not sure. Maybe you can silence it because it's a scream as well. I hadn't actually tried. I don't remember how it works precisely on floor 40 and 140. But shouldn't be anything that gives you any issues. Okay, and now we're moving on to the final boss, who has some fun mechanics that, if you read the name of the abilities, are fairly obvious. If you do not read the name of abilities, it will appear less obvious. Also, that dungeon theme. So good. So good. Alright, so the last boss is Lorelai. And, well, let's just describe the mechanics as they come out. So Virgin Tears is the major mechanic of the fight. This will drop a ton of these puddles on the ground. They just do damage over time if you step in them, which isn't too bad. But then the boss will do one of two attacks, either Morbid Advance or Morbid Retreat. If the boss does Morbid Advance, your character will uncontrollably run in whatever direction you are looking for just about 3 seconds. So you just want to make sure that when you see Morbid Advance, that you're not looking towards a puddle, and you won't have to worry about that mechanic at all. So here comes the second Virgin Tears. As you can see, there's an extra puddle. As the boss gets lower, more and more of these puddles will appear. Morbid Advance again, same deal. Just make sure not looking towards the puddle. So as you can see, that's what will happen if you are looking towards the puddle, but you can also see it just doesn't do a whole lot. Somber Melody just does some AoE damage, well, 9,000. If you took some ticks from the puddles, it could potentially be dangerous, but I wouldn't worry about it all too much. So now Virgin Tears is going to start covering... Oh, I guess now. I jumped the gun. I believe now we'll see Morbid Retreat. Morbid Retreat's the opposite. It will turn your character around. So as you can see, I'm facing this direction. It'll now just turn me around and run the opposite direction. So you just want to make sure your back isn't to a puddle at this point. I almost gave away my Grease Lightning just to zoom in and show it without messing up. Any monk can appreciate that. Okay, now Virgin Tears will also cover the outside of the arena. So you'll have less room to work with, but Morbid Advance and Morbid Retreat still work exactly the same. So as you can see, looking towards the middle of the room, I'll just run towards the middle now with Morbid Advance, and then we're good to go. Somber Melody, just more AoE damage, whatever. And then I think it'll do the exact same thing except do Morbid Retreat. I don't know if the order is the same every time, but both the times I've done this dungeon, Morbid Advance and Morbid Retreat have come out at the same time. Void Water 3, just don't get hit by it. It's damage. There's no reason for you to get hit by that. It's just move out of it. Yeah, so the next Virgin Tears, that one, it's going to be dead before you get to see it. But it would be the same thing, except you'd have to deal with Morbid Retreat instead of Morbid Advance. And since you've already seen all those mechanics, you should be very familiar with the way that it works. There's also a minion that can drop from here. It is the Guido minion, which, again, another callback to Final Fantasy V, and is a turtle minion. So overall, pretty simple first dungeon. Hopefully you enjoyed this basic walkthrough of it. I, again, will have a more structured guide that is shorter in the coming week or so after my 24/7 event is done over on Twitch. So anyway, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. I'm going to get back to my Twitch stream and advancing through the main story so that I can bring the rest of the walkthroughs of the main story dungeons and all the other dungeons to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take care. All right, perfect.